All right, picture this. You haven't seen your son for over 9 months because he's been hitchhiking around Australia. He finally rocks up and he asks to interview you on camera for the first time. If that wasn't already enough, he then invites you to tell a tale that you've kept a secret for decades because of an overwhelming sense of shame. To kick things off for this 26-part series, I figured we'd wind back the clock to where it all began. I only recently heard this story for the first time, and it's helped me grow a greater level of respect and empathy for my mum. Since hearing about her battle with psychosis while I was in the womb, I actually found out that one of my best mates went through pretty much the exact same thing. It was a pretty special feeling when we both realised we weren't alone, and it's been instrumental in driving me to want to tell some of these stories. I know it's pretty heavy.
Yeah, no, it's all right.
I know I'm asking a lot of you, and I'm putting you on the spot, and we don't have to do it.
No, I can do it. I've done a lot of professional development, so coaching courses and professional development on things like positive psychology, optimism, learned optimism, those sorts of things like that. So lots of interest in psychology and behaviour and group behaviour as well. My name's Julie Plunkett and I'm talking about when I had Ben, my middle child. I remember actually conceiving Ben.
I don't think I've heard this story. I don't know if I want to either, but carry on.
I knew I wanted 3 kids. And it was definite, so I sort of had you close together. So I got pregnant with Jessica in 91, had her in 92, got pregnant with you in 93, had you in 94, and then got pregnant with Jake in 95 and had him in 96. So I had a miscarriage in between you and Jess, between you and Jake, and then I had a termination by choice after Jake. With all of my pregnancies, I had more like sickness, like nausea and all that sort of thing. Not really vomiting, but felt sick. And I remember, the day that I had you, but it very clearly was really easy, good delivery. But the pregnancy was different to the first one. I didn't do well psychologically throughout the pregnancy and ended up going on some antidepressants, like ones that were suitable for while you're pregnant. And I also had a psychotic episode while I was pregnant with you. And it was really strange. I remember telling your father that I had to go to the shops, and it was in the evening, like it was at night. So I don't know why he would have thought that was okay, but maybe it was a shopping night or whatever. But I'd said I have to go to the shops. And so I found myself in the maternity ward of the Canberra Hospital, like at night when it was all dark, so all the lights were off and all that sort of thing, just roaming around the corridors, like heavily pregnant. Just thinking, how did I get here? Like, why am I here? Like, really bizarre, frightening, worried that if I told anybody that I might be at risk of like not being able to keep Jessica and you, that there could be my parenting could be questioned. It's like suitability, if you like. And so I just kept going, I suppose. And the delivery, I was induced with you 3.5 weeks early because it got to the point where my doctor felt that it was in my best interests to have you. I went in the morning, like with your father, and Got lots of photos of like standing there excited, ready to go, and went in and had you that afternoon. While we were in hospital, I got a chest infection and got off to a bit of a bad start because I was anemic, on antibiotics, which wasn't good for you through the breast milk. For a brand new baby to be having the antibiotics come through, and I was having blood transfusions. That was a bit of a tough start, sort of physically, to be a bit behind the 8 ball when we got home.
Yeah, I feel like I'm hearing this all for the first time.
Oh, well, I'm giving you probably some detail that you haven't heard before because, I mean, it's funny how much it still it triggers an emotional or a physiological and emotional response in my body, like talking about it. And I don't feel sorry for myself for anything. I think that in hindsight, I feel that after Jessica and after you, because both of those times my placenta got removed manually, like not in the theatre like they did with Jake, it didn't get done properly and bits got left in both times. So I went home with you, anemic, with a chest infection, with an infection in my uterus because I had bits of placenta still left in there. So I feel ripped off in a way, and in turn I felt that you got ripped off for, I guess, not a good start to our relationship because we had these issues that made it tough for us. And I wonder whether or not your experience in the womb and in your early days and all of that, like my psychotic episode while you were in the womb and all of that, like what effect that had gone on to have on you in your life. And I mean, we'll never know for sure because we don't have a control group, do we, like to compare. But I don't know, like based on all the research we're hearing about now about like mind-body connection and the transfer between mothers and babies and all of that, you have to wonder whether or not, that played a role down the track for you. Not to mention growing up with a mother with undiagnosed bipolar 2. So I was reflecting, I think a couple of days ago, you and I talked about my, what I call mismanagement or having mental illness during times of whereby not as much was known when I was, first diagnosed and first medicated at 12, which is quite a while ago now, and all the different episodes and all the different medications and diagnoses and all that sort of stuff that I've had over my life. It's clear to me that I don't think anyone maliciously decided to misdiagnose me, but I don't feel as though I had the best care or had enough put in to really trying to work out what was going on, and that I feel a little bit ripped off, and I feel that you kids and your father suffered because of that as well. And I don't feel like it's my fault because I did the best that I could, and I think that that your father and I have done a great job. If you look at the way that you all are now, like I could not ask for you all to be more well equipped than what you are, but it must have had an impact. It must have. And I just feel like our family was let down. And I'm not going to dwell on it, but there's a level of sadness and grief about that, because it wasn't just me, it was all of us. and it impacted my ability to even form close relationships with your father's family. I always felt paranoid, threatened by them. Not all of them, and they're all good people, you know. So I feel that a lot of my relationships over my lifetime have been affected by that mismanagement, or whatever you want to call it, especially when I look at where I am now and how well I am now. I think, imagine if I had been this well all the way along. Like, I could be running the world. No, but I'm, and then I say, well, that's not helpful anyway, because if I had been this well all the way now, I would have just been, I don't know, it would have been what it was. It wouldn't be what it is now. So it's not helpful to say, oh, if only, because I wouldn't have this story. I've got a very acute awareness now of triggers and signs, and actually I have action plans that I just snap into, and it's rote. It's just by rote. Like, it's like rote learning, how you learn your times tables. 1 times 1 is 1. For me, when I start to deteriorate, for a start, Jessica will notice it often, or I'll tell her. But back then I didn't have the same sort of understanding, and when you're pregnant, obviously your hormones are absolutely all over the place, your body physiologically. So that's another thing too that I think got missed, and that has been missed, and it's only becoming more and more. There's more focus on the physiology of mental health and mental psychosis and things like gut health, for example, like all of that. Like, none of that was attended to back then. When I had Jake, because of my experience through having Jessica and you, and postnatal depression, right? When I had Jake, I got in touch with a doctor that made these special hormone suppositories over in Western Australia, and got those sent over. And even though I had the hemorrhage and the bleed with Jake, ended up in intensive care, emergency surgery, like proper nearly died. Like, they couldn't get a pulse, my blood pressure was nothing. I did not get postnatal depression after I had Jake. I coped brilliantly. Why? One reason why is because I stayed in hospital for 10 days after I had him, and I didn't get sent home anemic with a newborn baby and a chest infection and a toddler like I did with you, right? So I stayed in hospital. I got all the blood transfusions and all the drips and like all the medical treatment that I needed to be well. And the other thing is, within the first couple of hours of giving birth to Jake, I had these pessaries these hormone things put in, even while I was in intensive care, because I did all this research about the impact of hormones on depression and well-being after birth. And again, we'll never know because there was no control. But I did that though, not the doctor or the specialist or anything. I got them sent over and paid for it all and everything. Very unsettled baby, colic, screaming, didn't sleep. Although, do you remember like ear infections? Like, it just went on and on and on. Allergic to normal formula and had to have soy formula, and then it turned your poo green, and so we had to get a different one, and this and that, the other. And how much of that, when I look at the way that Jessica has responded to her children, the girls' needs through diet and changing their diet, and the results, the really good results she's got. I didn't know any of that back then. Like, maybe all I had to do was eat differently and you would have slept and not have a sore tummy. So I don't know if it's helpful to try and infer too much about who turned out the way they did because of what, but there's no way known my mental health or lack thereof at times didn't affect you children. It must have. Like it must have, because I can remember days and weeks where I felt like every minute was a struggle. And then I look back on the photos and everyone looks happy, clean, fed all the time. So I don't know how much of it was just in my head or how much of it you felt. So I was forever having the telephone cut off, the power cut off. Mum would have to send money for groceries. Just bring it on, like the salvos in Dixon. There used to be a salvos in Dixon, Salvation Army. Yeah, it was an unattractive time of life. I think that asking for help has become people are more likely to do it now. I think that, and we know that women are more likely to ask for help. The mental health has been on the agenda. It's one benefit from COVID, because there's always, benefits whenever something tough happens. There's always opportunities. I think mental health has been on the radar and more openly talked about since then. I just would encourage people to connect with what works for you. So I used to go to, at different times, I found I got a lot out of going to a postnatal depression support group. I found that really helpful. I made friends there. The one thing though that I'd say that I've only just learnt to really consolidate, like in these more recent years, every time that I've backed myself and my gut feeling, every time I've been right. Every time. So those hormone suppositories that I got, every time that I pushed hard at the doctors when one of you kids was sick and they were saying, oh no, it'll be right, or I pushed hard, every time I pushed hard, I was right. So if you've got a feeling that there's something wrong, just keep going till you get the right person. Because I just think that we do have a lot of expertise about ourselves. We might not be able to grasp the right words and communicate, with clarity, but if you know something, you know it, and just keep plugging away till you find the right person. That's my advice. Your early years, you were an early adopter of anything physical. So, like, you were on your hands and knees doing this arch thing, like when you were like 4 months old. Like you look like a baby, and you're like this doing this arch. I've got a photo of it, and you don't look like you're old enough to be doing it. Like you walked early, and then you ran and you climbed, and like I'd be sitting on the couch like feeding Jake, and you'd like be over at the kitchen and you'd be looking at me knowing that I can't get up because I've got the baby on the boob, and you'd climb up onto the bench like watching me, and there's less than 2 years between you and Jake. 22 months. So up you'd go and you'd be looking at me like this, knowing like you can't get up, like you've got the baby on the boob, and up you'd go onto the kitchen bench and go and get the treats out of the cupboard, or, that sort of thing. There's a lot of famous people and a lot of artists and creative people that have diagnoses that are bipolar or schizophrenic, or like composers and artists, and that are like as nutty as a fruitcake. Okay, but And also there's lots of people, famous people, that have done these amazing things that are also on the spectrum. All right. So for me, I think that sometimes if you have a gift, even if it's small, or if you're a certain type of thinker or feeler, that there's a downside that comes to it as well. So what I think is that even though we have this affliction that we live with and we'll learn to manage, because I've learned to manage it, and it's good, and I sit manic most of the time, hypermanic, so not full on, but just enough to get it done. And I don't, when I go down now, it's not full on rock bottom anymore, but I'll notice it and I'll sit with it for a few days and I'll come out and I'll go again. So it's much more moderated. It's not spikes. It's more like this, which is really good. And would I give that up? Or would I give up what I also get with it, which I think that my thinking and my perception and my acuity with people is probably what I'd call my gift. Small g, not capital G. Something that I really value and that I have, and that this other stuff enables that. So it's like you got to take the good with the bad. That's the way I conceptualize it. So I think that somehow this whatever you want to call it, cyclothymia, bipolar 2, whatever, mood disorder, has gifted me stuff that I wouldn't have if I didn't have that. That's the way I look at it. Because otherwise I'd just be vanilla. Because when I'm managed, like I'm on and I'm good. So it's about managing. And I'd prefer to be a bit more Neapolitan than just a flat line. Yeah, that's just me. Because I don't think that anyone can have these conversations. And it's the same as when you were going through your stuff. Except there was those hairy times when I wondered whether or not I was going to get a call to say that you were hanging from the rafters or you'd been found somewhere. What you and I, though, have been through in terms of the mental health stuff and everything, the others haven't. And they won't. Most people will have a period of time, then they'll come out of it, but we live with what we live with, and it's not going anywhere. It's part of who we are. So that's what we have in common. And it's livable, like it's doable. If you're wanting advice, somehow had a faith that if I just keep doing, I'll be all right. So it's just about keeping doing something. Like keep moving. Because any action will be a step toward you coming out of wherever you are. But it's hard to give advice though, Ben, or, to people because sometimes they can't hear it. Anyway, so I have strategies, and I would encourage other people that experience these times to have strategies written down of steps, like, where you have a list, for a Saturday to say I've got to do the shopping and I've got to do this and I've got to do that. I've got to get dressed, I've got to brush my teeth, I've got to go for a walk around the block. If you have these things written down and you just go, first one, right, do that, and then the rest of them somehow get easier. And that's how I live sometimes. I just do what I need to do without even thinking about it. I just do it. So the discipline is just doing it, and then the faith, because I know that if I do this, this and this, I'll come out. I just know I'll come out because I always do. The adult learning that you've done, so that learning where you've sought out what you want to know, and it's been that self-directed learning. But you and Jake have gone on to do all of this learning, research, you've studied, you've immersed yourself, you've done all of that through your podcasts and reading. Just as valuable. And all of that you've brought to bear in our relationships, because you both bring things to me all the time. Like, I didn't do any of that when I was back needing support. I just rocked up to whoever I got sent to. Didn't think about their any of their methodologies or theoretical frameworks or what I was exposing myself. I just blindly thought, well, you've got all these letters after your name, you must know. You know, so all of that is where I forgive myself for those early days of what I look back and think, gee whiz, like, you were in Struggle Town. And I forgive myself because I think, no, that's come from, and your father, who's an inquisitive person as well. You know, I'm not saying all me, only 99%. No. No, but I'm just saying all of that ongoing learning and curiosity, critical thinking and all of that, well, you all do it, and you haven't all been to university, so it's come from somewhere, you know, and you've sorted out. So that lifelong learning, it's happening. Anyway, that's enough.
Jules. How good was that? Mwah. Oh. That's where I get it from, mofos. You're unreal, Jules.